Town Hall Building Committee, full meeting, December 7th, 2021, just about 7:05 p.m. I say your first name, could you say your full name and here on the committee? Wayne?
Wayne Sawchuk here.
Mark?
Mark Cameron here.
Carolyn?
Carolyn Coffey here.
Sam?
Sam Wakeman here.
Josiah?
Josiah Stevenson here.
Thank you, Phil there, here, Chair. Thank you. Looks like we've got a lot to cover on the agenda here tonight. The cost discussion is what I have on here first, unless somebody, is there something else we need to do first? Okay. I'm assuming that's the 40 grand summary that we're going to talk about. Who was going to present that?
I can show that to you. I can share this. Let's see, folks, see that okay?
Yes.
So here's the number that we're looking at. This is a 50% construction documents. And there's been a jump in this number since design development. In round numbers, we've gone from about 9.5 to about 11.5. So just under $2 million in terms of the jump. And then you can see the raw cost down here for construction for the alternate, for the geothermal, and we'll get into that separately. So there's a variety of things that have gone into this. First, I'll point out escalation is extended out now for the spring, into the spring, and it was shorter last time. It's been, I mean, this estimate is about, it's based on a set of documents. It's about a year ago. And so we've got a little bit more escalation on there because we're going to go out, bid this thing a little bit later than we were originally thinking. So there's a couple $100,000 on there for that. But in addition to that, we've added some scope, and there isn't any one big thing that we've added where all this money comes from. It's a bunch of smaller things, and we have some others that we're actually considering adding that are not included in these numbers, and we have some of those questions for you tonight, and those are what we're going to do about acoustics, for example, if we're going to add some additional acoustical engineering, and then presumably that would result in adding acoustical treatments as well. And then what's not included in here is the generator, and we've also talked about adding that. The new basement is finished to a higher level, basically, than it was in the design development. We've got some offices and so forth down there and other things like that. And so there's just a different caliber of lighting and mechanical systems rather than just an unfinished basement for storage. We're spending a little bit more on there. We've extended the stairs down there. It's a lot of little things and they add up. But another thing here is that costs have escalated since in the last year or so, since this last estimate was done. The DD estimate was dated January 4th, 2021. So, we're 10, 11 months since then. And when you look at a couple of different things, the structural steel, for example, jumped by a fair amount. And it's not because we added steel. The cost per ton went from $3,700 to $3,900 up to about $5,000 a ton since then. And it's a lot of little things. When the thing first came in, my first thought is, okay, where's the money? Where did we add it? And when I do a side-by-side comparison, a lot of these, the first thing on just by division, you look at a lot of these numbers side by side with the DD numbers, and they all went up a little bit. I mean, a couple of them came down, but they all went up a little bit. And when you start digging into it, it's those unit costs. Here's that structural steel at $5,000 a ton across the board. And the numbers in here on the DD estimate ranged from $3,750 to $39. So we're just seeing that pretty much across the board. So this is lots of little things. So it's a combination of things, and it's a fair amount. It's $2 million. What that means for the overall budget, I will defer to Steve and John on that. I don't know the answer to that. But it obviously, there's also some things in there that are kind of baked right into this estimate that we talked about, the potential for doing as add alternates and pulling some of that scope and cost out of this cost estimate for the base bid and creating an add alternate. And some of those things could kind of get added back in. But one of those examples that we had, for example, is we talked about doing replacement windows in the existing town hall as the base bid, and then an add for restoration. Well, that wouldn't actually take any money off of this estimate because the restoration of the sash is not in here. But there are some things in here that we think we probably could take out. And I'm not proposing we do that today, but it certainly it seems like one of those things that makes sense to do. And we can come up with a list that we can talk about, and then we'll have to vote on those and order them probably at a later date. But we assume that and a value engineering kind of once through on this is warranted given the jump in the prices.
Phil,
Yeah.
just to clarify, the $9.5 million, wasn't that January of 2020? Isn't that almost 2 years ago?
Gee, I don't think
It
so.
just helped
It
sell
was
the
January
jump.
4, 2020.
2020. Yeah, so it
2021.
just helps sell the jump if it's 2 years ago instead of one. That's why.
Was it 2 years ago? Okay.
I think so.
I thought it was 2021. I'm sorry, I had that open earlier. Let's see if I can find it. This says January 4th, 2021.
Yep.
Yeah,
Wow.
I got it. I got 2021. Correct.
Phew.
And so that number here was 9.2. And then in addition to that, we also had this number for the HVAC, and we added $100,000 as an allowance for painting the outside of the town hall, which is included in the cost now. And that all those things were in Steve and John's project budget. And that's where the 9.5 comes from.
Gotcha.
But that basically
Okay.
compares apples to apples to
Thank you.
this number. So just over 9.5 to just under 11.5. So about a $1.9 million change.
This
Phil,
is almost exactly what we're seeing on projects of all different sizes. 15% over budget every time, no matter what size.
do these figures include any project manager and architectural fees?
This is just construction
not.
cost.
This is pure construction.
Yes.
So
Well,
we
there's-
should probably add on how much for, we're going to be up to the 14 or 15 million?
That's
Probably.
that's a better question for Steve.
Yeah, actually, I did run some numbers and inclusive of the geothermal, which we may not go with. I mean, we're potentially up to 16, almost 16.9.
So 17 million.
Yeah, and some numbers can be adjusted a little bit. I'm still carrying 12% for a construction contingency just because of the nature of the older building. We could drop that to 10, but I wouldn't want to drop it any less than that. I've got up 5% soft cost contingency, which changing that that's a smaller number. So some of the things that I think it's on the agenda to talk about is the geothermal, because that's almost a $1.3 million item that again, all inclusive with the raw costs that were on that cover sheet, and for hold on one second, for 781,000, but there is also the associated cost of, it was determined to be a 3-month duration, which will be 3 months of carry for the GC for his general conditions costs. Not his markups, but, his trailer, his superintendent, his PM, those type of items, potential winter conditions. And then the soft cost of the design, the additional construction administration, hiring a geothermal well engineer to monitor the installation, some soil testing, and, if we're going an additional 3 months, we're going to have to carry another 3 months of a builder's risk policy on the building. So that, that really pumps up that say round numbers, 800,000 for geothermal to almost 1.3.
My concern in trying to get into a final cost is figuring out how we fit this into everything else the town wants to do from a capital standpoint. And if it looks like it's 17 million, it's 17 million, but we need to, it's easy to come in under, it's harder to come in over in the final analysis.
But it's more like 15.5 or 15.6 without geothermal, correct? Steve?
Yeah, correct.
Well, I'm going to assume 17 at this point.
Well, the only way we'll do geothermal is if the economics work out, and the only way the economics work out is if we get grants that offset a lot of the costs. And so I think 15.6 is not a bad number to be focused on.
I'm not aware of a grant program that's going to help you pay a significant portion of $1.3 million for geothermal. But we would love to get a final vote on that tonight. Dominic Cuniello is here from GGD, and they have completed the revisions to the life cycle analysis, the cost analysis. Based on the new numbers, they worked with Achieve, the town's ground source consultant that you've hired. And then we had the two of them work together to put together numbers that they were both satisfied with. And then we actually sent those numbers, which included a kind of a small, medium, and large, a low, medium, and high number range for each of those things to the independent cost estimator. And we tried to stay out of it. Johnson Roberts tried to stay out of it so that it could be as independent as possible. In other words, we didn't talk to the cost estimator about what the number should be or anything, and just let them do their thing. And that's where the 780,000 and some change comes from. And then that number was given back to Dom, and he reran the life cycle cost analysis with those numbers. And he's got that. Dom's here tonight. He's got that if you'd like to see that, if you think it would help, because we'd love to get a vote up or down on geothermal so that we could wrap this thing up. We just put together a 75% check set for the documents and posted the plans, and I was waiting for my PDFs of the specifications to compile, and I actually had to stop it so that I could show you the estimates because it didn't finish before we get on here tonight. But I'll have that posted later on as well, and you'll be able to take a look at this technical specifications and the documents thus far.
Great.
Yeah.
If Don can show that, that'd be great.
In this last 25%, we're really going to need to know what some of these outliers are and whether they're either in or out, so that we can get this thing wrapped up for you. You're muted, Dom.
Thanks, Phil. No, great introduction. I'll go right into sharing. I put together a little presentation with the report summary. So just share that. everyone see that okay?
Yes,
Okay, great. So, thanks for having me here tonight. As Phil mentioned, we're tasked with providing a life cycle cost analysis update based upon updated well field capacity based upon the design development. So that got reduced from 60 tons at the SD level to 55 tons. I believe we had 19 wells. We did work with Achieve Renewable and our ground source consultant, TAO. And based upon, the cost analysis, I think, we went with what we thought would be the most cost competitive and lowest cost, which would be a traditional U-bend, single U-bend design, which would be 16 wells at 505 feet deep. Previously at SD, that was carrying like 19 wells. We worked with the Achieve Renewable to kind of get certain breakout costs for the well field. We provided those to AM Fogarty, the project cost estimator, and certain other breakout items such as excavation, project general conditions costs, field oversight. They filled in the blanks there to come up with the overall project well field cost of that $780,000, which was indicated. So it didn't include the additional items that Steve Kirby mentioned, about 3 additional months. This was just the well field. If there was no impact to those type of things, what would the well field cost? So that was a $780,000 that we used as that incremental cost add for the well field system. We also reviewed with Achieve updated equipment efficiency. We actually ran the analysis based upon 2 different manufacturers, probably both what I'd consider the leaders in these VRF air and water source systems. So that'd be Daikin and Mitsubishi. We use a similar electricity and natural gas rates that we used previously. The well field cost estimates, SD, we heard feedback that they weren't all inclusive. So we did our best working with the cost estimator to make sure that they were more comprehensive. So this is the analysis based upon the Mitsubishi equipment. Option 2 is the air source VRF system. Option 3 is the groundwater source geothermal system. So over a 30-year payback period, doesn't reach payback. When we're comparing the ground source to the air source system, has a negative $637,000 return. And the Mitsubishi.
Dominic,
Yes.
just one question. The sheets that were sent out, and I was just looking at the Mitsubishi ones compared to the Mitsubishi ones. I was trying to figure out what the difference between the 2 Mitsubishi sheets were.
Okay, so the 2 different, we did run another analysis and we looked at it as project construction costs. So a lower incremental cost. That didn't include the escalation, contingency, general conditions costs.
What's
Okay.
the raw cost?
So the 780 is a project cost. The lower numbers were just a construction cost.
A good way to think about that, Mark, is that the lower number that Dom ran on the Daikin and the Mitsubishi is more of an apples to apples to the way they ran the analysis the last time.
Correct.
And
Okay.
then the higher numbers include all of the other costs, including the trenching and the piping back to the building and a lot of that stuff that wasn't included originally.
Okay, so it's the higher number on each one of those sheets. That's
that's
the
what
more
we're looking
real
for.
number.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And we were just at a point where we wanted to, we just ran both numbers just to see if, you
Gotcha.
know, but none of the 4 updated reports show a payback over the 30 years when you're comparing option 3 versus option 2.
Correct.
So this is a Dakin, very similar, minus $640,000 over that 30-year payback period. So, you know, I think it validates, you know, both the equipment efficiencies, you know, wouldn't be the cause of selecting, you know, one manufacturer versus the other. So I think that was a good exercise to go through.
How far out would you have to go to have this have a zero payback? 50 years?
Based on these numbers, likely beyond that.
Would be beyond that,
Yes.
probably 60, 70?
Well, you're also going to end up, you're not going to end up making 60 or 70 years with the equipment. The equipment will fail.
Right. You would
Yeah,
then
I
have
get
to
it.
do like we're doing more
Okay,
exterior equipment replacements, and then even interior would be at a 30-year period.
mhm.
So it's a whole nother analysis, and it's really not what would be, you know, done in the industry, you know, with a 30-year life equipment.
Not relevant. Thank you.
Just also the piping for the geothermal system is about 50 years. You know, it should last longer, but no one, you know, just hasn't been existed that long enough where people have, you know, that experience to say it's going to last more than 50 years. You know, just this is very similar to what we presented previously, just so everyone, you know, understands what would be proposing with the geothermal, be extremely similar to the air source VRF on a space by space basis. The real change would be we're using the well field for heat absorption and rejection rather than air cooled heat pump outdoor condensing units. And with that, it does have, you know, the benefits of a higher efficiency, lower carbon footprint, lower noise levels on the outdoor equipment. And, you know, as we're seeing through the analysis, the large con is the increased capital investment. And in this case, you know, just doesn't pay back over the study year period. Would also require increased site coordination for the well field locations, higher automatic temperature controls, and some increased maintenance costs due to the associated well field pumps and interior equipment. Again, the pricing would be proposed for the 16 wells within the parking lot. So that added, you know, some of the costs and site concerns, just added time. Talking with our consultants about a 2.5 to 3 month period that Steve mentioned. And that is basically our update on the well field pricing and cost analysis. Is there anything else that someone wanted me to go back to another screen or?
So Dom, it's really by your analysis, I guess the bottom line is this isn't the way to go, correct?
Yeah, if a system's not gonna have, you know, a payback within a 30-year period, and
Or
in this
more.
case, likely 50 years.
Right.
It'd be a tough sell economically. It probably doesn't make the most sense. And I would agree with Phil. I'm not aware of any incentive program that, you know, would do much to sway these numbers, you know, to make it have a payback. Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, we both, our firms were in a meeting with utility company and their energy modeler and said, you'd likely get more incentive for a geothermal, but you're talking about probably tens of thousands of dollars difference, not anything more than that.
Yeah, his impression was that the percentage change in the efficiency would only result in a small percentage change in the amount of grant money that they were talking about. And the money that they're talking about is, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it was in the $50,000 to kind of $80,000 range is what they were kind of guesstimating. And that might change by a couple $1,000s.
Right.
If it's just a few percentage points.
And there might be another program like, that you could get involved with, but, that would be in that similar range. Probably, $50,000, it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I remember years ago, the Mass Technology Collaborative was paying grant money for things like photovoltaic systems and so forth, but I don't think they had any money for geothermal at the time. And they don't have any grant money at all now that I'm aware of.
How would this compare with alternative energy like solar power, perhaps like they're doing in the railroad stations of putting structures in the parking lot with the solar panels on top of them? Which, in other words, this is the only thing that we really looked at for really cost savings in the environment. But have we looked at solar or anything else either on the building or in the parking lot?
We did talk about it briefly, and putting it on the building is certainly more cost effective than adding it in the parking lot, because you need to build a structure in the parking lot to support it. And so whereas on the building, you've already got that structure. Given the building's orientation, the way the roofs are, it's not a great candidate for solar on the roof, and adding solar on the roof of an historic building has traditionally been problematic with historic district commissions and so forth. Although it's not beyond the realm of possibility. So we probably could, typically, if you put something on the roof of a building, just given the size of the amount of area that you'd have on the roof versus the amount of usable space inside, you're probably looking at a system that's going to do somewhere between 5 and 10% of the electrical needs inside the building. And we're not going to be able to do much more than that on the roof. And a system for a building like this is got to be something in the $175,000, $225,000, something like that. And it'll pay for about 10% of your electricity costs. And so if you take a look at the electricity costs that Dom has here, about, call it 40 grand annually. And if you're going to save 10% of that with your PV system, that's $4 or $5 grand a year for, $200,000. That's a long payback period. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to have, but it's a labor of love. You really need to want to do that in order to pay for it. Again, typically PV systems don't really pay for themselves in a reasonable amount of time without significant grant money. The Mass Technology Collaborative, for example, 15, 20 years ago was paying like 50% of the construction cost of a PV system.
I would agree with that, Phil. The other thing I'd like to add, though, is, HVAC option 2 is a very green option, being an air source VRF heat pump. We're eliminating fossil fuels from boiler use, using this system to heat and cool, and it provides simultaneous heating and cooling. So if one zone is in heating mode, the other is in cooling mode, it tends to self-balance before it has to use new energy. So it is a highly efficient system, and that's what probably the number one cause of having such a long payback of the geothermal system is that it is highly energy efficient.
I just think that it's important, and I'm glad this discussion is being held now, that they are the things that we're looking at or have looked at, so that when people later on ask the questions, you know, from the public and stuff, to see, you know, what we're doing about, you know, conserving energy and doing that type of thing. So,
Yeah, and another on the HVAC design, not only the air source VRF, but you know, the system is a hybrid system in that we've got dedicated outdoor air systems for ventilation, and then the VRF system for your heating, your space heating and cooling. So it's not like one large oversized system designed for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. The ventilation is broken out, and we're sizing equipment just for that ventilation load. And then the VRF units are sized for its space heating and cooling loads. So that's another factor that leads to its higher energy efficiency.
thank you.
Bill Lair, are you looking for a motion?
I want to make sure we ask anybody else on the board if they have questions for Dom or Steve or Phil, excuse me. Josiah, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I've just noticed that HVAC equipment has become so efficient that it's hard to beat them now. And it seems to me that, you know, they last for what, 20 or 30 years, then you replace one with even more efficiency. So you'll literally never get there. Even if you calculate now 100-year payback. So I think the system that was discussed, the VRF, is a good one.
Yeah.
So, Dom, just a question in terms of if we proceeded with option 2 and installed that and had an operating building with option 2, and miraculously there were credits that came along in the future that people felt it was justified to change the system over. Seeing as we've already bought everything for option 2, installed it, how would it work from a system perspective of changing that to a geothermal? The air source condenser would go away, and could the system be retrofitted to work with geothermal?
It would, but it'd be a major project.
It would also be a disruption of the entire.
Disruption, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure, and not a major project in the terms of the well field itself, but just in terms of the components specific in the building, let's say, or right outside of it.
The ventilation units would have a large impact because the ventilation units on the air source side get connected to an air source VRF. And if it was on the well field, you'd probably want to just go with what we would propose under this option, just have them integrated with the water source heat pump. And then you would run the condenser water piping to the air handling equipment. You'd have to do things a little differently. So compatibility of the ventilation equipment wouldn't be as straightforward as it would be with the space VRF units, because those would already have the refrigerant piping from the condenser, which would then have to get integrated into a water to refrigerant condenser. So it could be done, but it's not, the easiest, just to be honest.
Because there's the thought out there that it's a simple one piece of equipment swap with a couple of pumps to do that, to switch it.
For part of it, yes, but not the ventilation units.
And that ventilation is to meet a code requirement, correct?
Correct.
Sam, what are your thoughts on it?
I think
I don't think it makes, after all of this, I don't think it makes sense. It would be wonderful to have it make sense, but the payback's not there.
Yep. Wayne, thoughts?
Yeah, I just think there's too much risk in going with the geothermal, in every aspect, whether it's the final cost of drilling through the ledge and the thing disrupting the parking lot and all that other stuff that I think is just going to add to it. And so I'm not in favor of the geothermal.
Is there any other questions for Phil or Dom on this topic? I think we're fine to do a vote on this at this point. If everybody's interested in taking care of it. Would like to do that?
Sure.
Someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we do not go with geothermal.
Second.
Second,
I'll do you one at a time. Wayne? Aye. Carolyn?
aye.
Right. Mark?
Aye.
And Sam?
Sam Wakeman, aye.
Josiah?
I means no.
And Phil Lear is also aye. So it's unanimous that we are going to abandon the attempt to use geothermal on town hall project. Thank you for the votes. All right, what's the next thing we got?
If-
Temporary town hall? Is there someone
Does
that's gonna
anybody have
speak
any-
on that?
Does anybody have any more questions for Dom, or can we let Dom go?
No, we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. Take care.
Thank
Thank you, everyone, again.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for all the
Good
work you
job.
did.
Bye now.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, the next is the temporary town hall. Do we have updates on that from somebody? Michelle?
So no updates. We will have to go out to bid. I think we still just have to understand better when we're going to time the bid. And what our approach is going to be. I think I'll need some guidance from Steve and John on that. But I'm thinking the bid should probably go out sometime in February at the latest. So we have a better understanding of where our home's going to be and any outfitting that's going to need to be done, and see how many bidders bid on it.
And part of that is, when are we anticipating special town meeting for the project, which would mean we would have bid in hand, so we'd be going out
Set the
to
date.
bid for that.
I don't know that they set the date for annual town meeting yet. Is it the
May
first week?
24th.
It's that late.
Nope, sorry, that was, May 2nd.
May 2nd, okay.
Okay, that's town meeting. I know we've talked about going to the town meeting or having a special town meeting.
There won't be a special, Steve. It's just going to be the town meeting.
Okay, and I'm sorry, Carolyn, that was May what? 4th?
Second, Monday night.
So we can work backwards from there to determine, because there's only 30 days, we can ask them to hold their bid, and then we can work backwards from there to determine when we should have the bid in hand.
Yeah, Phil and I were talking about this earlier today, just with that date, we can now work in particular direction for documents and bidding and so forth.
So it looks like February, the beginning of February, it'll probably go out, right? February to March.
Well, we need it before, like probably the week before the town meeting, just to make sure the amount gets on the warrant. And then if we go backwards 6 weeks, we're in March.
We'll want a little time to check their, well, maybe we're doing pre-qualification, and so we won't need to worry about it, but we will need to take a look at the bids and make sure we're square with everything and can recommend them, right? I hate to try to do that in a week if we.
And that's a little nuance that we weren't really looking at before. When we were under 10, we
Right.
did not have to pre-qualify.
Well, we may value engineer back to that point, but I don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
We got a long way to go.
There's a long way.
Oh, I see.
Sorry,
Exactly,
Carolyn,
yes.
did you
Yeah,
have-
over 10 million, you have to pre-qualify file sub and GCs.
I was just wondering logistically, I'm thinking if I'm building a house, I'm going to sit down with the architect and kind of go through all the specs and everything and to, like, is that the value engineering that you're doing? Like, do we have no part? Like, at what point are we making decisions about the windows and those kinds of things? There are some things I think that we still need to decide
Well-
before we go to construction docs, right?
There will be a list of, we'll go through probably a long list of items that, Phil will come up with or Phil and I, or whoever, Stu, as a team of things that can be considered to be, maybe not taken out of the project, but reduced. We talked earlier about, natural finish versus a paint grade, trim finish on the interior, things like that. But we wouldn't make arbitrary decisions without getting your input. Because I just went through that exercise on another project, and some things that I thought would be deleted or reduced, committee wanted. So
that'll over the next 8 weeks or so, those will be brought to us as they come up.
Yeah, actually, probably the sooner the better. We have posted documents, and as I mentioned earlier, I was trying to get the specification up there. I'll probably have it up there later on tonight or tomorrow morning. That we're at about 75%. And so we'd encourage you all to take a look at those drawings and the specifications. And the next time we meet, we'd like to kind of go through those with you. And in the meantime, if we can get it done, we'd like to put together a list of value engineering options. And that may include things that could be reduced, things that could be eliminated or exchanged for something else, or things that could be swapped for something that's less expensive in the base bid. And then the more expensive item could be moved into an add alternate, so that if you get a good price on it, you could maybe pull it back into the project if the base bid comes in low. The market is volatile right now, and the last couple of things we've bid, I don't know how John and Steve, you guys have run into some of this, but we've been a little worried on some things, and they've come in lower than we thought, and then other times we're surprised by them coming in a little higher. Volatility is just one of those things, and it doesn't seem to align with the kind of sweet spots in the calendar the way they sometimes used to and stuff. It's hard to know what we're going to get for bid results, and so building in a little bit of flexibility into the bid with add alternates, we think would be a good idea to help pull some of that value out of the base bid and put it into the alternates, so that you know that you have a solid project with your base bid, and that if the number comes in low, you could start to bring some add alternates back in. They need to be taken in order, and so we'll have to work out what the order is. But that'll all be part of that value engineering. And if anybody has ideas, I would say the next time we get together, we want to take a look at the documents, go through the, we won't go through page by page. It's kind of be hard to do with everybody here, but to kind of hit the highlights and make sure everybody understands what we're doing, and then talk about what these options are for value engineering and how the best way to organize.
So what's the best way to go about this? Because you got 39 pages of stuff to go through. You want all of us to go through at least to the point where most of us understand it, and we can help make decisions on particular items in it. And then you need some time to put together a list of things that we actually need to decide on. Like Carolyn mentioned, windows, doors, paint, that kind of thing.
Sure. Now you mentioned 39 pages. I assume that means the cost estimate. Is that what it is that you're referring to?
I was looking at the grand summary. Isn't that what
Okay.
we're talking about?
I would recommend everybody take a look at the cost estimate, but I don't think anybody needs to go through there and try to find things that we can save.
No.
Johnson Roberts and Vertex and our consultants will go through and put together a list, and then we will use the cost estimate to give you a value, and then we'll put them all together, and then we'll talk about those with you. But if anybody has an idea in going through the contract documents, the drawings and specifications about things that they would like to revisit, things that we've added in terms of scope, or things that you're seeing in there that you're surprised by, and you may say, oh, well, we don't really need that. And then we can talk to you about whether you really do need it because it's a code requirement or a life safety issue or something, or if that is a judgment call, and we can have that as part of the discussion.
Okay, so you will sift through it for us
Yes.
and have a list for us, and
Yep.
when would that, what's the timing on that?
The next time we meet, if we could do that well, I was gonna say in a couple weeks, but maybe that's right in the middle of the holidays, I don't know. But it could be as soon as a couple of weeks, or it could be, I don't know what people's schedules are like when it comes to getting close to the holidays.
So we've already had sessions of value engineering at different phases, correct?
Yes, but we've also, in addition to some of the things that we've kind of value engineered and traded, we've also added scope. Maybe
I just
we've added a
suspect
little
that if
bit
you've
more
gone
than-
through value engineering already, it just gets really painful to, we'll start talking about losing some things that we voted in already, so.
That is certainly possible. And it could be that when we get through to the end of it, we've identified $100,000 worth of things that we're going to take out of the base bid. And then we've identified another $150,000 worth of things that we're going to move into an add alternate and then have some kind of lesser value in the base bid, potentially. And then the rest of it, you're going to decide you're going to keep it in there and go to town meeting with something that costs more than what we had looked at back in January, because the numbers have gone up.
And there are a couple of things that we'd like to go over tonight that have been discussed as things that you might want to add into the project. And we just like to get a reading on whether you'd like us to move forward with some of those things too. So I don't want to lose sight of that as well.
I'm just trying to get an idea of timing, what we want to get accomplished before the end of the year. It sounds like, this is going to happen pretty fast, and we're probably meeting a lot in January just to get us through what we need to get through for February.
So 2 weeks from
Yeah,
trying to is the 21st, and I think we could be ready. Steve and John, do you think you guys can do it in 2 weeks? That's the 21st. If that works for folks, that
I can tell you right now, I have 2 meetings already scheduled for the 21st at 7.
Okay.
I think you're getting to a dangerous time at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm supposed to be on vacation, so that's not going to happen. But
yeah, the 20th, I have something else, but Stu and Natalie may be able to do the 20th.
or earlier in the day. I mean, that's. I know we moved this up to 7.
Yeah.
But if we go back a little bit, we can always do that.
Is it too much to ask to have it done by like the 16th, so we can push it up a week? So we're not up against Christmas week?
16th, let's see.
Make them work Saturday and Sunday.
Christmas is always only in the morning for one day. That's all.
And none of us at Johnson Roberts can do the 16th. I'm sorry. We've got a holiday party that's already booked for the entire office.
Great, we'll come. Let's do it.
You're all invited.
Or you can
Make a
meet at the
conference
table,
room.
right?
We won't get much done, but we'd love to see you.
So what you're saying is you want to do it the 17th early in the morning?
Right, yeah, 7:30 on Friday morning. That would be great.
We can't do it on the 16th either. We have the same thing.
Is that right? So I could do the 15th. We could certainly do Friday later in the day if people want to do that. I could do Tuesday, the 14th. We're starting to squeeze, that's
That's not giving you a lot of time.
not giving us a lot of time. No.
You can accomplish that on the 15th, by the 15th?
Not based on the looks I just saw from your project manager and the people on my team. They're looking at me like I'm crazy.
Okay,
Did we already rule out the 20th?
we did not.
The 20th doesn't work for me personally, but Stu and or Natalie could probably do it, and you would certainly have my input on the documents that they present to you. I just can't make it myself.
And the reality at a meeting like that, guys, would be
That's
to be
okay.
taken through what those options are that have come up with. And I don't know if you necessarily would you need decisions that night, Phil? Or is that more to say, hey, here's what we found. Here's kind of the order of magnitude. I mean, would you need action that quickly?
I would love to get through as much as we can, even if it's, no, that needs to stay, or no, that can go. That one's, I think, but if there's, we
Yeah.
wouldn't need to know what the order of the alternates were. For example, we could push that off to the following meeting, I think. But I think
Just the VE stuff would be ideal, to go right down the list and say yay or nay.
yay or nay. Yeah. That would
So
be-
what makes a meeting like that more effective is if we could have it to the committee sometime before that. Even if it's a short time, just so that people have at least had a chance to look through it and then maybe have to come up with some questions. It's a
Friday
lot
afternoon.
to, at 7 o'clock, give people a list of $400,000 worth of stuff and say by 7:45, we need an answer.
Sure. So we could get it together by Friday, the 17th, and folks could have the weekend to take a look at it. If that works for you guys, we could probably make that happen.
Yep.
When are you guys looking for comments technically on these, if we have any?
Well, as soon as you can, Jason, I think that'd be great. And if people want to mark up the drawings, or they want to send us a list of notes, whatever you think works for you, I would just make sure that you copy Steve and John, and how you want to handle it in-house, whether it all should come through Phil or not, that's up to you, but just so that we can keep track of it, and that it's
You could send it to me and I could collate it. And then get it to you, Phil,
Okay.
if that works.
and I imagine that folks will take a look through in kind of what we've posted kind of in preparation of this VE meeting that we're talking about for about 2 weeks from now. And if you have any comments before then, you could certainly send them. I don't think we need to go through them at that meeting. But if you wanted to, I mean, the sooner we get them, the quicker we can kind of respond to them and get the answers and the clarifications that you need back to you, and then included into the documents. This is 75%, so 25% of it's not there. So if there's something missing, I'm not going to be surprised, but we'd love to hear it if you find something.
So Phil, is our charge to get to budget or to make a recommendation if it's not that?
If you have ideas about how we could reduce cost, or I think that would be great for that value engineering discussion. What the overall budget is and what the target is. The jump between what we're looking at now in design development of about $2 million or so is based on just comparing those two numbers without any changes in the project budget. Steve mentioned that he's done some additional work, and the project budget may be different than it was in January. I think it sounds like it is. So Steve and John are probably better to answer what the budget is and what our target is for trying to reduce cost.
Josiah, was that comment to the other Phil?
It was, but actually,
That's what I thought.
All right.
I apologize. I do have to jump off. I'm getting texts from a bunch of people now to get on another meeting.
I got it, Steve.
okay.
Thank you, Steve.
I wanted to ask about Steve's contingencies, because those are pretty high for 75%, don't you think? Architects?
So contingencies on a reno like this, we would carry a high contingency.
At 75%.
Yeah, absolutely, because there's still, until you rip it into the walls in that old building, we would tell you 10% on construction all day long for the reno portion, 5% on the new. And that is not negotiable in my mind. You want to have.
I thought he said 10% across the board. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, that's where we would put it. It would get a little bit further in, but you could conceivably go 10, and he's going to shoot me for saying this, and then 5 on the new piece. So you end up at like a 7.5% kind of blended, if it's 50-50, but.
Well, that's a chunk of change you just mentioned. And it's a new building, it's fresh off the ground. So it's not like there's unforeseen conditions once you get out of the ground, and we've already been in the ground with the existing building. So.
Yeah, well, we're going a little deeper. We've got hazardous materials, and once we dig into that old building.
Yeah, I mean, those are the things that we again, order of magnitude right now to get it so everyone can see it and understand it. Can things be tweaked? Absolutely. You know, and the hope is that, you know, this does get more refined as it gets closer.
But just relative to your 75% CDs, Fogarty was carrying at the DD. Fogarty was carrying a 10% design contingency in their estimate, and this current estimate is at 5% design contingency. So then they're not carrying very much as a design contingency on 75% documents. This is
just to be clear, the design contingencies that are within Fogarty's estimate are to account for the lines that aren't drawn yet, you know, the items that aren't specified. But you look at that Fogarty estimate as if the drawings were done today, 100%, that Fogarty number is the construction number. The estimates, the contingencies that Steve is calling for outside of that as part of the project budget, they're not the same thing. If you looked at the early schematic design budget that Fogarty had, he probably had a 25% design and contingency, design and pricing contingency, design and pricing contingency. And as that design grows, that contingency within the estimate gets smaller and smaller, and eventually on bid day gets down to zero, because theoretically, every door has been drawn, every window, every brick, every item has been accounted for. So that D&P contingency is really the estimator's acknowledgement that Phil's drawings aren't done yet, and they shouldn't be. And as they get moved towards completion, his D&P contingency moves to zero. So if he does an estimate for us the day before we go to bid, he would have a design and pricing contingency of $0, because everything is theoretically in the estimate, or in his estimate at that time, because the drawings are done.
Except for unforeseen circumstances that happen during when you're doing the work, which you just
and that's the contingency, Wayne. That's the contingency that Josiah is asking about. That's the stuff that Steve put under the line. Absolutely, because all that Fogarty cares about is the construction amount. We care about that amount plus the design fee, plus all the other soft costs, plus your furniture, plus our fee, plus any contingencies for any of those other numbers that may go over for whatever reason, you know, we've discussed. And then the question there becomes, how much is too much between having a number that people point at and go, why are you carrying this, versus, you know, not carrying enough. And remember, the construction number is we hope to replace that construction number with a bid number at some point, so that at least it's not an estimate anymore. It's an actual, hey, we went to bid, and here's the price that builder ABC is going to charge us to do the work. So at that point, there's no more guessing. The only thing in that total project budget that's open at that point is really the contingency that Wayne just mentioned, and anything else that we have in there for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Those would be the only things that wouldn't have been bought yet. Everything else would have been bought. The rest of your design fees, the rest of your OPM, your whole construction budget, all that stuff is committed at that point. We know what those numbers are. So at town meeting, that's really the best case scenario, but you have to sweat until you get there, until you get to bid day, so we know what that number is. And that's why Phil's talking about those ways to do alternates, so that we have a bit of a relief valve. If on bid day things come in a little higher, we've made some decisions in advance to say, okay, instead of putting hardwood in this office, we're going to put tile, VCT tile, vinyl tile. Or in fact, we're going to do it the other way. We're going to design it to put tile in. And if we can afford it on bid day, we'll put the hardwood floor back. And that's kind of that's the whole idea of an alternate system, at least with adding alternates. You can do it with deduct, but history has shown us that if you give someone the higher price something on bid day and say, hey, give me a number to take that hardwood floor out and put in VCT, you never get a dollar for dollar. You know, you get like a 50 cent on the dollar. So we like doing it the other way. We like going in more minimalist and saying, okay, if we have money, what are the things we want to put back in the job?
So that's the list you're talking about putting together for us to look at.
Exactly. Well, a couple things. Yeah, Phil. So there's two things. When this list that Phil and we will look through to try to come up with is a VE list. So what are the things we can change right now in scope that will help us get costs down? And then of those items, what are the ones that we can actually put back in as an alternate on bid day as an ad. You know, there may be a decision that Phil or we bring up that is kind of a fork in the road that, you know, as an example, earlier on, you made decisions on HVAC systems. It's kind of too late to do that now. But there might be a decision that Phil comes up with and says, hey, if we make this particular change moving forward, you won't be able to add it back in by alternate for the following reasons. You know, things with finishes are easy, but sometimes there are some things that you just can't, once you make a decision to take it out for cost, it's too hard to put back in later because of some change in the detailing, some change in the design. So that becomes a, you know, there's going to be a list, and most of those things you could hopefully put back in later, but some of them you might not. And it's just to let you know that, but we won't know until we finish kind of this look through.
Sure. So are we still talking about getting that list to us on the 17th or by the 17th? That's still possible?
Yep.
And then are we still talking about getting this board together on the 20th to look through that list?
Yes.
Is that enough time? Is that, I don't know how this, I don't know what your list is like. If your list
Yeah,
is.
no, guys,
other things,
it's
easy.
enough time, but if the issue here is, and I haven't been through all the numbers with Steve, if the issue here is $2 million, this don't expect, I'll tell you right now, to come back, you know, on the 17th with 2 million in savings.
Right.
You know, because we're going to get to things are just costing more, and you're going to get to a point where the only way to really cut the budget is to cut the square footage, which is an entire redesign. So we're going to reach a point where and Phil, tell me if you think I'm misspeaking, or Stu, you're going to get to a point where we can take enough of the stuff out of the job to get it to a number that works. But beyond that, you start, you know, I call it cutting bone. You've cut the fat, you're cutting bone. It's just, why is this so expensive? It's because it's the market.
Yep.
I mean, and that's the,
Yep.
you know, that's the harsh reality of what we're in right now. Steve, I don't know if Steve conveyed, you know, we bid a senior center a few weeks ago, which was probably one of the more simple buildings that you can do, single story, you know, normal finishes, all of that. You know, probably had estimated $560 a foot, and it came in at $605, low bid. Town decided to go with it and eat into some of their contingency that we, you know, that 10% number that we're carrying, which was 5 or 6 on that job, and now it's 3. So, you know, why? Well, it's just because that's what the bids came in at. So there are things that are, and as Phil said, you know, the estimators are struggling to make heads or tails of some of this. You know, our hope is that we're being conservative right now, and we're all pleasantly surprised on bid day. But that depends on the day of the week and which way the wind is blowing right now, it seems.
Totally unpredictable. Get it. Totally get it. So good. You'll get that to us and we'll plan on the 20th, probably earlier. Can we do 5 or 6 o'clock on the 20th? Can we set that up now or no? 6 o'clock on the 20th or 5 o'clock? Can anybody do that?
That works for me.
It should work.
Fine here.
When,
5 o'clock, good for me.
5 o'clock if we can. All right, just get that out of the way. You good with that, Michelle?
So 5 is preferred, 6 if.
Yeah,
6 is
we can. Yep,
Second choice.
that'd be great.
Yep.
All right, Stuart, you had some things you wanted to bring up, and
Yeah, there were a couple of things. You had asked us at the last meeting to get a proposal for doing an acoustical analysis of the hall, and that we're assuming that would take a look at that, and they would make some recommendations that would increase the construction costs somehow, because they'd want to add things in to take care of it. If you still want us to pursue that, I don't have the proposal in front of me. Phil, do you have it, or Natalie?
Looking for it right now. I think we sent it.
I think we sent it out earlier, but in order to have time, we really need to cut them loose to move forward with that. If you want us to do that.
I'm curious, have you seen an acoustical analysis before in a hall and what it does include or doesn't include?
We have done, yes, we have done this before, and they'll go in and they'll measure the reverberation times, and they'll probably would make some recommendations for putting some sound absorbing material in, or maybe making some other kinds of modifications. And I really can't give you an idea of what the, what the dollar value of those would be till after they do their study.
What's the estimate on the study?
That's what we're trying to look up, but we had sent.
I have it right here. It's $4,300. I just found the email. I can read it to you. It says, as requested, we have prepared this proposal to provide additional acoustical analysis. I've attached the proposal from Ascentech Inc. for these services, which clarifies their scope of work. As you can see from the attached proposal, the fee from Ascentech includes work performed in 2 tasks. Johnson Roberts Associates' scope of additional work will include review, coordination, and an on-site meeting. Please note that this proposal is for initial analysis only. There will be additional fees for the design work once the scope of work has been established. The fee proposal is $3,000 plus a $300 markup from Johnson Roberts, and then potential additional design services from Johnson Roberts of $1,000 for a total fee of $4,300. And if I look at the Ascentech scope of work, there are 2 tasks. Task 1, visit Cohasset Town Hall and measure the reverberation time and background noises of the space. At this time, we will also inventory the existing finishes. If you're able to join us for the end of this visit, we can discuss conceptual design solutions to improve the acoustics of the space while on site. And task 2, we will develop a set of treatment options for the room that will result in improved acoustical performance for the program types hosted by the auditorium that complement the existing finishes. We will summarize the results of our findings and recommendations for both tasks in a report. We'll be available to answer questions you have related to our findings via phone or email. There's a lot of other stuff in there too.
I think that's a small amount to do something that could be very important to us and make a decision on what we're going to do going forward with it.
I agree. I think it'd be very valuable.
Sam, you okay with this? We'll vote
Yeah,
on it.
I'm okay with it.
Mark, any questions on it?
I'm good.
Josiah, any questions? Okay. Can somebody make a motion for this?
Josiah, you're muted.
That's okay. It's fine.
We just need a motion. Thank-
I'll move that we engage the acoustical study. Period.
For $4,300.
For $4,300. Okay.
A second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Say your name and say your full name and say yes if you're in favor of this study. Wayne?
Wayne Sawchuk, yes.
Carolyn?
Carolyn Copy, yes.
Sam?
Sam Wakeman, aye.
Josiah?
Stevenson, yes.
Mark?
Mark Cameron, yes.
And Phil Lear, yes. Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
I do have one question on it. When they're measuring the reverberations, our design is going to have a different shaped room. Will they be able to put up screen, do something to change the, because that might affect the acoustics and the reverberations. Will they do kind of some sort of way to see how that will change with our design?
Yeah, I don't know whether they'll physically do anything or whether they just take that into consideration in the analysis.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did you say who it was?
Oh, this is Ascentech?
Oh, I work with them all the time, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I know what they're gonna say. Sidewalls variegated, back walls. $4,000, because don't take it from me.
Can someone like Lisa Pratt be around to sort of discuss what it is that we're doing with the stage and the performances and stuff, or will they have enough knowledge to know that that's what we do anyway?
Well, they're on that first item in their contract, in their offer, they say that people can meet with them at the end of their visit to talk to them about it. Is that right, John? Yeah, what you read?
Yes.
So that'd be an opportunity for Lisa to meet.
If I understand correctly, I'm sorry.
I think we need to make sure that the people that don't like the room are there to talk to, not the people that are currently using it.
Right, because there's things that you use that room for, and I understand that there's some things that you would like to use that room for, and part of the reason that you don't or that you can't is because of the acoustics. And if you're gonna
So
do,
maybe Tucker can reach out to the people that he heard from.
Yep.
people that said
because
that they
I think
wouldn't play
that's-
there.
Yeah,
But if you tell them that in addition to speaking engagements and plays, if you're planning on doing a symphony or a jazz band or a rock and roll band, if these guys, this is what they do for a living. So if you let them know the kind of things that you'd like to be able to do there, they'll include that when they're making recommendations.
Okay, so we need to know when they're going to be there and when, timing wise, we can invite people to meet with them at the end of their visit. And then we'll give that to Tucker and he can set that up with some of the interested folks.
So we can set that up with them, and would you like us to let you know, Phil?
Yes, be great.
Okay.
And is the $1,300 to the architect to put in some of the recommendations that are come forward with the result of the study?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Stu, did you have something more?
Yeah, Phil, did you want to go over the IT issues that have come up?
We've got well, there's a couple of, I have a short list, and the first one, the next one is probably the biggest, and it's the generator. We talked about a generator, and we also spoke about it with the Board of Selectmen, or the Select Board, I'm sorry. And so far, we've been running with what seemed like the choice that people like the best, which is a whole building, a full building generator, a generator that will, if the power goes out, the building will continue to run the way it does when it's connected to the grid. That's obviously a big generator, and it's larger than what it would be if you were just trying to keep the emergency lights going and to keep the heat going so that the pipes don't freeze. That's a smaller unit. Full-size generator to do the entire building is going to be significantly more. But that's what we heard that you all were interested in, and that's kind of what we told GGD to look into. Now, they haven't done all the design work on that yet because we're waiting for a vote. I don't.
sounds like a perfect alt ad.
It is not.
No? Darn.
Initially it sounds great, but because the emergency lighting system would be tied into this if you put it there, and if you don't put it there, the emergency lighting would not be tied into. We would have battery backup on those lights, and those are two completely different systems. If you have a generator, you'll have an emergency electrical system in the building. You'll have separate emergency electrical panels in the building that are all connected to the generator via an automatic transfer switch. It's a completely different system, and to price them separately gets really, really complicated. And the numbers that you'll get on the alternates from all of the bidders will be all over the place. And you really have to design it twice. And so there'll be some additional fee money to design two different systems when you're really only going to go with one. I think John alluded to this a little bit earlier. As part of that VE discussion, we'll talk about things that make good alternates and other things that don't make good alternates. John mentioned that things like finishes and stuff like that are pretty easy alternates. We can swap one thing for another pretty easily. That makes a good alternate. If it's really integrated and tied into a bunch of other things, it doesn't make a good alternate because it means two different systems.
For the record, Phil and I did not speak before this call.
Geothermal, for example, is not a good alternate.
So Phil, is this on our list for 2 weeks from now, or is this something you want tonight? Or
Well, any of these things that you could tell us, the sooner the better, because GGD will have to design this system. Right now, they have emergency lighting systems that are battery backup, and they've written specifications, and they're in their schedules at this point. So
Phil, I think what the group is going to need and the town's going to need is what the upcharge is.
Yep.
You know, I'm going to have to call the estimator back and say, what's the
question.
You know?
I had a feeling I was going to hear that.
So that's on the list.
Yeah, because if this is an extra $150,000, you know,
yeah,
there may have to be another discussion with the, you know.
We did have some rough numbers when we talked to the select board, and I just didn't pull them out. And I don't know that I can put my hands on that quickly, but I'll have it the next time.
Can we consider?
Wayne, did you have a question? Sorry.
I have a question. can we consider putting in a automatic transfer switch that handles the whole building and wire it in that fashion, and then have the batteries and stuff for the alternative system, so that in fact then we could roll up a generator if we wanted it and tie it onto the automatic transfer switch and switch it over if in fact we wanted to do something like that. In other words, we're getting to a point where the town's going to have some generators on trailers that would handle this building if in fact it needed it, it was available and needed it.
Sure, I see what you're saying. It's kind of a hybrid. It's with a roll-up generator, it wouldn't be an automatic transfer switch. It would end up being a manual transfer switch, right? So it would mean, if the generator isn't sitting there, then it won't automatically switch over, which is a code requirement.
Right. ATS can be operated manually. That's the point I was going to make, is that it would be operated manually. If you ever went to a full-time generator, it could go on automatically.
Yes, but what that does mean is that you will pay for the automatic transfer switch / manual transfer switch, the emergency electrical panels and routing, and battery backup on your lighting systems. You'll have to pay for both systems and then integrate them.
I know that there's been some opportunities that people will furnish generators as part of demand management, third-party people. That could be an opportunity too to look at for the site. And looking at it too, I think you're gonna need to move that generator to way in the back corner. That's a bad spot, given the neighbor's proximity where you put that thing. It's right in somebody's backyard if you're on the site.
When we exercise the thing for an hour a week, you mean it's going to bother them?
It's literally in their backyard.
Okay.
Like we need a lot of screening to make that not look obnoxious in their backyard, and the church's backyard to some extent too.
Okay, I'll get a better answer on that.
Okay, great. What else do we have?
Speaking of the church yard, we just wanted to mention that you are very close. You all know this, to the church, and that brick walkway and the stone benches and the landscaping and everything is very close to the building. And so in order to be able to do this work effectively, work on the outside of the building, do the roof and so forth, we are calling for temporary protectives of the plant materials and the brick walk and the seating stones and so forth. But in order to get this work done, the contractor is going to end up having to go over the property line onto the church property in order to get some of this work done. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that and is clear on that. We will own the temporary protection, and then if there's any damages, they'll obviously have to fix it and restore it to the way it was. And they'll take video and photos ahead of time, and so will we, so that we have a record of what it looked like in case there's any argument at the end. But I just wanted everyone to understand that is an issue, and we'll end up having to have a conversation at some point with the church to make sure that they're okay with that as well.
There's going to have to be some sort of a bond for the contractor to ensure that in fact it is done. Because in the past, there has been significant damage with even when it was painted and stuff like that, with them putting on a wet day, running some of the scissors lifts and stuff like that up there, which they don't want to do. So.
Okay.
Good. I think if you tied the church into your geothermal system at the town hall, they wouldn't have any complaints.
If we wouldn't want part of that, Phil, don't worry.
You need more wells.
Maintenance part of it.
No, good point.
I got a couple more things on my list, just while I have you here.
Right.
We are showing 3 parking spaces on the street right now in front of the building on the site plan. And I know that there was a question about that at one point. And right now, none of them are shown as handicapped. And I know that there was a question and a request that we have some handicap parking there, so that if somebody is coming to a play or a concert at the hall, they don't have to park around the back of the building and then make their way all the way up to the front. So the question is, of those 3 spaces, if we make one of them handicapped accessible, do you think that will work to folks?
Make all of them. Make all of it acceptable, in my opinion.
You all tell me if that's what you would like to do.
What is it, what would change if to make them handicap accessible? Does it eat into the green space or what happens?
There's a little bit more space requirement in order to get that to happen. We probably need to jog the walkway a little bit so that there's room so that people can unload. I think it makes sense to have either to make them flush with the sidewalk. And so we'll have to work that out. So rather than have a ramp, we'll just lower the whole sidewalk so that it's flush. So that you could lower down a lift from a van, for example, or transfer into a chair and then not have to try to make your way, down the middle of the street until you can get to a
Jason, can you
curb cut.
respond to this?
Yeah, I think what Phil's saying is true. You lower the sidewalk down. But by the way, Wayne, when you say make them all accessible, you mean make them all accessible, but not paint them all blue, correct? They're not going to be official handicap spots 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, just for event parking, or one permanent, but 3 accessible that could be marked.
Do what you basically have built already, but just have it so that those spaces are wide enough for handicap. There's a sidewalk space next to it. And in fact, we could put at our disposal signs today. If there's something event, we could make them all 3 handicapped, or we could have 1 permanent handicap, but we're not going to have 1 space that's built handicapped and then 2 spaces built regular. You know what I'm saying? Because we have events like, let's something that's almost for events that attract more seniors, for instance, voting there, and people 90 years old are coming, and there should be places for more than 1. Our church has 1 space and yet 2 people are handicapped every Sunday. And so this would be a spot that other person could park in.
So we could just make those.
I wonder if it's going to mess up your ramp around though, Phil, when you come around from the entrance and ramp up to the front. You may have to push that in too in order to make that happen. I don't know. On your grading on that.
We can talk to Civil about it. If for some reason we can't and they can't make it work, I will let you know about it. But I mean, what you're talking about is universal accessibility, right? And it's not necessarily has a sign on it, but it just means that anybody who is, if they're wearing a cane, or if they have a walker, or if they're in a wheelchair, and they may not necessarily have a handicapped tag on their car, but it would just make it easier and more convenient for them if they didn't have to climb up over the sidewalk or look for a ramp curb cut. And we could do that on those 3 spaces again. And if we have trouble doing it, we can let you know. But if that's the goal, that's what we'll try to do.
How many places are there?
There are 3 out there now.
3. So we're going to try to do that with all 3.
That's what we'll try to do. If
That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, because you're not going to see the 3 that are behind the building when you're out front.
Right. Okay, good.
Thank you.
You got it.
I appreciate that very much.
Got a couple more. We up on your existing roof, there is a weather vane. It's a little hard to see, but it showed up in a couple of our photographs. You can just barely get a little glimpse at it. And so what we are planning to do is to remove it when they redo the roof and then have it reset. And once it's down, and we've done this in the past, we'll take a closer look at it once they remove it. And if it needs to be restored, we can certainly make a recommendation to do that. And you can actually do that yourself. It's less than $1,000 based on what we've done in the past. And then we can give it back to them and they can put it back up. But we just wanted to make sure that that's okay with you. And we didn't want to surprise anybody.
What is it?
It's surprising because we don't even know it's there.
It's a weather vane. Do you have a photograph handy, Natalie? I think it's kind of hard to see. You can see kind of the top of it. It's got the compass points on it. And I mean, it's not like a big sailing ship or anything dramatic. It's pretty simple.
Does anybody know it's there?
I had the feeling when I brought it up that maybe not a lot of people did, but it's what our plan is. I assume that it's always been there in one form or another.
Is it at the front or in the middle or what?
I think it's in the back, if I'm not mistaken.
No wonder why we don't know where it is.
Jason, did this blow off the building a couple years ago?
That was the cupola. That's on the ground
Okay.
out back someplace.
Yeah, it landed in the church parking area.
Does it have a ground wire on it for lightning protection?
Are we replacing the cupola?
What cupola?
Yeah, we
The
don't,
one that blew off the building a couple of years ago.
No,
Isn't it on that was from the old part of the building, right?
That's from that old vent thing that vented out the stage,
Right.
Carolyn. I don't think it's actually gonna be reused in the new.
it's probably an old gravity vent rather than a cupola.
Yes,
It's a monstrous thing.
It looks like, yeah, it looks like they were gravity vents that ran up in shafts alongside, on either side of the stage. And
So I
those,
sent you a photo with the vein. I can't share my screen for some reason.
you sent it to me?
In Teams.
All right, let me see if I can. Okay. That's great. Okay,
You see a glimpse of it.
yeah. All right, can folks see that? There
What?
it is.
oh my gosh.
You see it?
Oh,
Yeah, okay.
it's a great picture.
Yeah, it's difficult to get it a much better picture than that, but
But it's not even
It's
on the
a-
top
it's
of the
a-
building. It's not even on the ridge.
it's not right. It's got to be sitting on something, but
That
it
is
doesn't show up in
weird.
very many photographs. And we actually I don't remember seeing it in person, but it's there. And so the plan was to take it down and then reset it. Now I imagine you might want to think about what it looks, depending on what it looks like, where we're going to actually reset it.
Are you sure that's not on the church? I'm not kidding. I just looked at the aerial photo.
Yeah,
I
I'm going to
think
Google Earth
that's-
right now.
That is
I think-
entirely possible.
What?
Jason,
It is.
that's
It's the
entirely
right direction. You're right, Jason.
I'm looking
could
at the
be.
photo. There's nothing on the roof there. That's
Yeah.
the church.
You're welcome to take that off the church, restore it and reinstall it.
Nice work. Okay. Who had
Just save some
Jason?
money.
Who had Jason in the pool?
Oh, Lord.
If you got dumb questions, I got dumb answers.
Yeah, killing me.
All right. The old jail cell in the basement, our plan is to do nothing to that other than to clean it as part of the project. Does that sound okay? We're gonna leave it as is. We're not painting it. We're not adding lighting. We're gonna leave the old jail cells the way they are. Does that sound okay?
I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
fine. I know that the Historic District Commission is interested in preserving it as is, so.
Okay.
What would lighting be? Something inside of it?
Oh, right. In other words, I can double check with my engineers about whether or not they need to provide emergency lighting in order to comply with the code. But if we did, we would hang something on the wall and that's it. We wouldn't provide any. In other words, it's kind of a grim old reminder of what it was like to get arrested in 100 years ago in a place like this. And we were going to basically leave it that way. We're not going to fix it up and paint it.
We can check. I think that's fine. We'll check with
There's some rust on
Sure.
the steel in there, but we were just going to leave it the way it is. There's no money in the budget to do anything else at this point. And if you wanted to do anything else, there'd be a little cost associated with that.
Are you leaving the vault in the basement too?
We were going to take all the vaults out.
Because on the plan, it's still on there. I'm just. 'cause I'm looking at it.
No, the basement one will stay.
Basement one. Okay, sorry, I stand corrected. I thought we were taking it out all the way down.
I have
Well,
a
this-
faint recollection that the historic committee was interested in that, the cells, but
Well, I think they're interested in just making sure they don't get removed. That is part of history that they want to be able to bring people down there and point to it and say, hey, this is what it was like.
Which brings up a question. When do we, at some point, we have to get the historic district, the Common Historic District Commission and the Historic Commission
Yep.
involved in some of these decisions that are going through, like the windows and that sort of thing, and make sure that we get there
Yes.
okay. We just want to make sure we build in time for that.
Yep.
If we need to be done by the beginning of February.
Yeah, great point. So will this list we'll be getting, will that include things like windows, exterior surfaces and that kind of thing?
The list that we're going to be putting together is value engineering items. And then we also want to have a meeting just to kind of go over the scope and make sure that everybody is clear, because things have kind of been in and out, and we've talked about different options, and we just want to make sure before we go to bid that everybody's clear on what's actually included, so that no one is surprised when we start building this thing, and things that are either there that you weren't expecting, or things that are not there that you were expecting. We just want to make sure that everybody's clear on that. I don't know if we can do all that in one meeting or not, but we certainly should do that. We have, I put a call in today, as a matter of fact, to the civil engineer to talk about site plan approvals and so forth. And we are going to coordinate with them in terms of local approvals and permitting. And so historic will be up one of those in the list that we'll be doing in your schedule. But we just need to get to the 75% point so that we have a clear enough set of documents. Planning board, for example, typically want to look at 100% working drawings when it comes to a site plan review.
But I think some things like if we're using any sort of engineered materials on the exterior and that sort of thing, they're going to need to opine upon. So I don't know if that's part of the 75% or goes to 100, but.
Yeah, that stuff is in there, and you can see what we're doing. That stuff's noted on the drawings, and then there are specifications that have brand names and so forth in most cases like that. So you can see what we're doing. Not expecting you to read through it all and figure that all for yourself, but we just need to kind of get to that point, get to this point so that we could have that conversation with you. And so, again, I don't know if will work on the same night as the VE discussion or not. I think that may kind of go for a while.
Okay, so that's probably not quite yet for the historical commissions to get together.
I
Sometime
think
at middle of January or something like that.
Yeah, I think we ought to plan on targeting their meeting. I don't know how often they meet, but we probably want to plan on getting to their meeting in January. That's right.
Are they meeting virtually or in person?
Well,
Or are you all still on virtual?
so, no, just the experience we had with the church next door. We had the both historic groups, and we invited them to the church. We had to sit down and we did a tour, and it worked out very well. I think we'd like to head in that same direction. We have a little bit of a handout, we have a discussion, and then they can actually walk around and see some of the, it's a more of a hands-on approach. They can see the windows and see the doors and so forth. So that would be something that we would set up for and invite them. So kind of trying to get an idea of when that would happen, when we'd have enough decision-making stuff on the exterior in our hands for us to talk about with them.
I'm just curious. We work with the state and they don't really have to follow the historic commissions. This is a public building in the town. Do we have to follow the?
I think if we're using any kind of state funds, we would have to go through Mass Historic. But since we're not using state funds, it's up to the local.
Mm-hmm.
I
And I
think,
presented
Josiah,
a
to your
long
point-
time ago this building almost as is, and they were very positive. So I don't anticipate it being a problem. I mean, maybe they'll get into the detailing and the color and the stuff like that.
I think
Yeah,
technically
I'm not
they
worried
don't
about
have,
it, but I do want to make sure that we have gotten their buy-in.
yeah, I think at one point, Joe, we did discuss it, and technically we are exempt, but we do our best to.
Yeah, it'll be
comply.
fine. But yeah, it's a good move.
I mean, the only big one we had the last time around when I went through with Carolyn was the gutters, oddly enough, where we had copper gutters. It was either copper or wood. We went with copper and we had to paint them. So
They want them white.
they want white gutters. And white downspouts.
Is copper still crazy expensive? I mean, should we be looking at, an engineered wood for those instead?
Well, if we're going to do them white, we could do them as pre-finished aluminum.
Yeah,
That's probably the most cost-effective thing to do. We were actually looking at zinc tin coated copper, which is kind of silver gray, and then after it weathers a little bit, it's kind of dull silver gray.
And that's
If they have to be white, you might want to just go with aluminum,
Yeah.
even though,
No, they're not allowed aluminum. So maybe we propose what you're proposing and get them to buy in on the concept of they're not gonna be bright white, but they'll blend in to an extent.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay.
Because our biggest fear the last time around was the maintenance of them. Once you paint something, it's perpetually painting it.
Yeah,
Right.
you gotta continue to paint it.
In the zinc tin.
And we
coated
know how
copper
that
just-
works.
Hmm.
Once
doesn't.
it dulls down, it will look exactly the same for, 20, 30, 40 years. You won't need to do anything to it.
Okay, so what else we got?
We are in our specification for selective demolition, we've enumerated a couple of things that need to be salvaged. Some of them are going to be salvaged and reused, but there may be some things that you want to salvage and keep or reuse. And we wanted to double check that with you and give you a little bit of opportunity to think about that. For example, we're taking out the vaults we mentioned with the exception of the basement. Do you want one of the vault doors for some reason? In Sturbridge, we took their vault door because it had a beautiful hand done painting on the front of it, done by an artist 100 or so years ago. And we mounted it on the hallway wall so that folks could see that. The only person that really ever saw that before was the clerk and the people that worked in the clerk's office. And so we mounted it. You don't have anything special like that, but they're old.
Is there a market for that kind of thing?
What kind of thing?
Of an old vault door?
An old vault.
Yeah,
There may be.
probably the scrap market would be my guess.
Okay.
For my wine cellar.
I don't know, like, I didn't know if like
Yeah,
an antique sort of thing,
I don't know. I would imagine there's probably a niche market for somebody that wants to hang it on a wall. in a
Guys,
restaurant.
Sometimes if it's a rolling safe, someone will have interest in it because it's a little bit easier to move, not entirely, but
I will tell you on the Ventress building in Marshfield, they had a vault and they had a cell just like you. And the vault door made all of these arrangements so the vault door could be saved. At the end of the day, it ended up at the DPW lot on the ground because at the end of the day, the romance of saving the vault door was far exceeded the reality and practicality of taking it out and saving it and all of that. Nobody wants it if it's unless you know somebody specifically who says, hey, when you do this work, give it to me. The contractor's going to want to it's going to be heavy. It's going to be a problem. And then if it's take it out for somebody else, it will not fit in the bed of a Ford 150. You need somebody, with a trailer and somebody that can pick it and move it.
riggers.
Yeah. I mean, you need a rigger. Yeah. So
It is right. It's not an easy thing.
Right.
Okay.
These are the kinds of things that we're talking about. We're planning on, for example, salvaging your flagpole and moving it rather than giving you a new one. There's a couple other things. The stage curtains, with the exception of your fire curtain, which needs to be replaced because it's made of asbestos. All the stage curtains and as well as all the stage props and so forth and all that stuff they have in storage. Will they take that all away and put it in storage or
Michelle?
They will.
including taking down
Lisa Pratt met us there, and when the renovation comes to fruition, she is prepared to take everything that has to do with the drama club and move it off-site.
Okay.
As far as the stage curtains, I don't know if she's going to want to salvage those.
I think we should ask her for some reason. Oh no, maybe it's the high school ones that are new. I was like, there are new stage curtains somewhere. I don't remember if it was the high school auditorium or those.
Yeah, so we'll ask her that. But definitely the props and everything will move off-site.
Yeah, there's stage curtains, props, materials to build props, lighting rigs and other rigs as well.
Yep, that'll all move off-site. Anything having to do with the drama club will move off-site. The only thing we have to check on are the curtains just to make sure that we're not removing something that's new to her and new to the club that they invested in.
And there is also a wall, sort of. It's kind of a framed thing that sits about 5 or 6 feet off of the back wall of the stage. And it kind of blocks the light coming in from the windows in addition to the blacking out that they have there. And there's kind of some things hanging on it and so forth. Is that something that we should keep? Right now, I think it shows as being demolished.
Let me go with Lisa tomorrow, and then I'll be able to email the group.
Okay.
With her responses.
Thank you.
We're getting down into the nitty gritty. Toilet accessories, does the town have a vendor or special requirements, or does the vendor, do they provide them to you for no cost and we should just have the contractor install them for you? Do you use a special kind of towel or toilet paper that we should allow for?
We have the cheapest possible that will always and be, no good. Please get some good quality ones. That includes for sinks, toilets, etc. There's nothing to be saved there.
Okay.
Actually, there's only a
Well,
couple
I think what Phil's asking, if you have a vendor that supplies certain paper
Right.
towels or whatever in bulk, sometimes you have to get a specific paper towel dispenser
Yeah.
If all
Same
the
for
buildings,
soap.
just to match up with the rest of the buildings in town. But if they don't match,
So to be completely honest, we do have a vendor. I don't know that we buy anything in bulk that matches anything, because we have 5 different dispensers for hand towels, 10 different ones for toilet paper. If they're not on a windowsill, I don't really think it
we can fix
matters.
that.
Yeah.
automatic dispensers in there and some of the blow dryers, and you're all set. Copy what's in the senior center, and you'll be all set.
But is that what you want? Is the quote unquote hands free?
you want hand dryers versus towels?
I think
Oh.
we put both in, but
I don't
think
remember
that-
what was
I
in the
think the
senior
hand
center.
dryers could get noisy in a public building like that, but I think we talked about this on the onset.
let's take some pictures of the stuff that's done in the senior center. Okay, and then maybe use that as something going forward. It's going to be really nice.
We haven't had hand dryers in the past. Why put them in now?
Because it's modern and it saves money.
Hey, our
They
energy
didn't have
efficient.
electricity when the bathrooms were put in there.
All right, so
Okay. Do you have any, we saw that you have a case for your weights and measures, and we're assuming that's going to get relocated into the building, and we were just recently taking a look at trying to find a place where it could sit without getting in the way. And that occurred to us, is there any other things like that? Do you have any large paintings or other artworks, a large, old oak conference table that sits 10 people somewhere that we missed, or anything else like that that you are planning on keeping and moving in and are going to want to make sure fits?
That dedicated map, Michelle, where did that end up?
Currently, it's in the town manager's office in the closet.
That needs wall space to hang somewhere?
It does, and we can measure that.
Okay.
Probably a little bit bigger than an E size.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can find a place for that. So if there's anything else like that, if you find anything, let us know. We just want to make sure that we have that stuff in there.
In the town manager's office are some substantial bookshelves that have a lot of books in them. I don't know if there's something like that is planned for his office in the future, or whether those could be relocated.
We did plan for some bookshelves in the town manager's office, but we didn't measure what's there right now. I do know what you're talking about. There's a bunch of books on there. There's also some awards and other knickknacks that sit there when we went through the building. And so we were planning for something similar to that, but we didn't plan on reusing them specifically. And let's see, I think I only have one left. When we talked to your tech services person, and I'm sorry, I wasn't in the meeting, I don't have his name. We talked about in the server room, one of the things he asked for was a raised floor in the server room. Now in a computer lab, you know, or a server farm or something like that, you might consider a raised floor so that you can provide access and easy wiring and so forth. But I mean, this is a glorified closet. This is a little bit bigger than a handicap toilet. This is not a very big room, and it's in the lower level. So in order to do a raised floor and not have a ramp that's going to take up the same amount of square footage as the room itself, we'd have to lower the concrete floor there, step the whole floor down, little foundation walls underneath it, waterproof it, because we're another couple of feet down into the wet ground.
Don't do it and just add ladder rack above the racks.
And so what we were going to suggest is not doing it and adding a ladder rack above the server. It sounds like I've got at least one yay on that one. Is that okay if we go that way? I think there'll only be 3, maybe 4 full-size panels that you could lift up in the entire room, and the server rack is going to sit on 2 of them. So it won't be very flexible, and we think you'll spend a whole bunch of money, and we think it will end up being worse in terms of access.
Right.
So we'd like to go ahead and just do a ladder rack.
You probably want to let Ron know that, though.
I don't think so. Don't get in an argument with him. Just don't do it.
Well, he's looking to put together, you know, like he's calling it a data center. So, I mean, it was a long conversation.
How many air conditioners are you putting in? 2?
There's one split unit.
One
that
split.
will handle what's in there.
Yeah, I just thought he'd want one for in case one goes out, you know, and have a spare. He has racks at the senior center, and they work very, very nicely because everything is exposed. He's going to make sure that he probably is going to put a special lock on the door so that no one else can go in it. And it just doesn't make sense to put the raised floor there. Raised floors were put in data centers to put the air conditioning in rather than the cabling. And so that's my opinion.
Yeah, in this case, we just don't think it's worth the expense. You know, it's got to be $10,000-$20,000 just to put the floor in the room, and
it eats up space as well.
just don't think you're going to.
And we don't have it now.
Right, you don't have it.
It's just not needed now.
Okay,
Well, we could certainly reach out to him and say that we spoke to you all, and you
decision
folks
made.
said, you know, we can say we tried and they said no. No, we don't mind taking it on the chin. You know, you folks have to live with these people. We'll eventually get in our car and drive out of town, and so you can blame us. You can say we recommended against it.
If you mention the fact that you'd have to put a ramp in order to make it handicapped accessible and stuff,
or recess the slab, and that just gets
yeah, we went through all that. Yep.
Yeah. So we can reach out to him and say that we looked at it and just didn't think it was going to be cost effective for him. Okay, that's all I have on my list.
Well, that wasn't bad. Did you get the answers you wanted, or did you get answers?
I did get a lot of answers. Thank you very much.
Okay, cool.
And a little bit of homework, and we'll come back to you with the answers on that stuff.
Awesome. Stuart, did you have more?
Oh, that's it.
Oh, wow. Really? Next thing on the list I have is the mass save schedule.
I don't know what that means.
Neither do I. I'm hoping someone will say something.
That was the mass save, the incentives with National Grid.
Okay.
We had a charrette with Denise Rollo from National Grid. I did reach out to her on, I believe it was Monday, to find out what the status was, and I did not get a response.
Okay.
I know that the information that we had discussed, maybe it's October, had been forwarded to her through from GDD. So I'm just sort of, I'll chase her again to find out what the status is.
All right, great.
Are there any other incentives, because we're going to be putting in a new HVAC system, that we can be getting some money back from that, because we'll actually be saving electricity from the current systems?
That was all rolled into that same discussion that we had with them.
Because
They included the energy efficiency and the lighting and mechanical systems.
and then, of course, the old part of town hall will all be replaced with new there too.
Right, that's right. Yep. I was reminded that when we were talking about working at the neighbors, the church, that I forgot to mention that there's also the neighbor on the opposite side, whose driveway is accessible through the town's parking lot. And what we're planning on doing is indicating on the documents that the contractor needs to maintain access to that driveway throughout. And so there's probably going to be some fence moving and jogging around so that they can get everything done that they need to get done. And there may also be some times when that person has to drive in over crushed stone, for example, because they're in the middle of getting ready to do new paving. The fence may move around a little bit and their access may change from day to day, hopefully not too often. And then there's probably going to be a couple of days when they're doing things like paving or they're digging where they just won't have access at all. And they're going to have to coordinate that with that neighbor. There's really no other way around that. We just wanted to make sure that folks are aware of that, and ask if there was anything that we can do to help kind of work that out with that neighbor so that they understand what might be coming at.
I'd be more than happy to help you with that. I do a lot of work for that property owner.
That'd be great.
And I think that the church on the rocks there also has some access going a little further. You know, this is a second house up above, but they don't have dedicated parking or a garage or anything there, but they often leave a car there for that house. It's a rectory for the St. Stephen's Church.
Okay.
And then, of course, the congregational church, you know, being a good neighbor, often has things to get over to get into the church from the rear, and we want to make sure that there's potential openings in case of a fire or other type of emergency. So it shouldn't be that they have to petition off the entire parking lot without having some places that they don't put something in.
Yeah, if it's things like egress that they need to maintain for folks, we'll make sure that that's included.
And all of our trailer mounted generators are in that garage, so they may have to be relocated out of the garage behind town hall if in fact we need to use them for an emergency and to be able to get them in. It's just something to, in other words, just move that to another town area. And if you did that, then there's the stage people might be able to put the stuff that they had in the basement into that building and then not have to take it too far off site because they won't be using it.
Anything else, Phil?
No, thank you.
Stuart, you're good? Next thing we have on here is social media. Tucker said he'd make it when he can. I just pinged him. He hasn't responded, so we'll skip that for now unless somebody. Mark, you want to make a comment on the last post? No? Okay. It's fine. And we've got the meeting date set. The next steps are going to be, you're going to get some information on the 17th to look over the weekend. Meeting will be on the 20th at 5 p.m. We voted on the acoustical study, so we're good there. Well, is there anything else we need to go over? I've gone through my list. Natalie, you got what you need now?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Okay. Phil and Steve are all set.
Thank you.
Michelle, anything else? Cool. If we're good, then just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Thank you very much. Stay safe.
thank you, Phil.
Good night, all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.